Om Shanti, and a very warm welcome to all of you for today's webinar about spiritual vaccination. Before we begin the webinar, we'll take a moment of silence. Sit comfortably and take this time for yourself. Keeping aside all the matters of the world, matters in your mind. Keep them aside for this hour and give yourself this gift of time to explore your inner beauty, and to figure that highest connection with the Divine Being. To experience protection and healing. To dive into that experience of complete security, total peace and freedom. To understand your own value. And to see the beauty of everyone and everything around you. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. Welcome again to all of you for today's webinar about spiritual vaccination. These days, we all are excited about the things and updates in the world. So our topic today is going to be a little bit related to it, vaccination, but unique spiritual vaccination is what we are going to discuss today. So my name is Sri Divya Jaini, and I've been practicing Raj Yoga meditation for over 20 years and feel very fortunate to get that opportunity to get the experience of spirituality and meditation practiced regularly. So we will go into today's topic. As we all know, health and well-being is a multifaceted, multidimensional thing. That is, it's not dependent on one, but it's dependent on multiple factors. For the well-being of the human being, we have to be able to manage and keep in balance a lot of different factors. So health is when we have well-being in our physical state, emotional state, and in our intellectual state, our mental state. All these are parts of components which give us complete health. But the main or the central pillar you can call for all these we will be the spiritual health. So when the spiritual facet is strong, then we get the support in all the other factors such as physical, mental, emotional. So the spiritual health can be considered as the central pillar or support for overall well-being, and it has a direct impact on our mental, emotional, and physical. We all know that. And because it has an impact on all these levels of health, it also impacts our interaction in the society at the social level, environmental level, and educational level. All these components of health are also affected because of the spiritual health. And as we all know, for us to be able to remain healthy, our immune system plays a major role. It is a critical part for us to maintain our health. And what do we call as immune system? Something that is a part of the natural defense system that is there within us, within the body, in the case of physical immune system, that protects us from diseases, that fights the invaders, you can call, or microbes, and protects us from diseases. So this is the natural defense system that is there within us. And we all have been become more familiar with and have been practicing a lot of these physical immunity boosting tips to increase our immunity in our life, especially for the past year or so. Even those people who didn't care before have gotten more tuned into improving their immunity with things going on around us. So some of the factors, as we know, which help us improve our physical immunity, you can say that it's consuming a healthy diet rich in fresh vegetables and fruits, and diet rich in antioxidants. And along with diet, exercise also plays a major role, right? So they both go hand in hand. And adequate sleep and stress reduction strategies, whatever we may do, also help in increasing our physical immunity. So they act as booster physical immunity. And staying away from addictions and harmful substances like drugs definitely improves our innate immunity. And vaccines form a big part of um, how our immune system can be improved, or it can be boosted. So vaccines are major, and that's the major outbreak now update for all of us, that's giving us hope to deal with and overcome the effect of the pandemic also. So we're all excited and have been doing all these things at the physical level for increasing our immunity. So we said spiritual well-being or spiritual health forms the basis of the all the other aspects of health in our life. So for this spiritual well-being or spiritual health, how much do we pay attention to it? So take a few moments and answer for yourself. You could answer in the chat window also. Whether, what do you think? Do you feel that you're spiritually healthy? Each one of you. You can answer in the chat window what you think. And if you don't feel you're completely spiritually healthy, what do you think? you're suffering from? Like, what kind of spiritual illness would you say you're facing now? You can answer in the chat window, Q&A window. Do you all feel we are spiritually healthy? Or is there something that you think is an illness for you at the spiritual level? Yeah, mixed answers. Some are saying yes, they're healthy. Some say no. Some are like yes and no, trying to be healthy. That's very good that we feel spiritually healthy and we're trying to be healthy. And yes, some of the illnesses that are being listed, fear, loneliness. Yes, these are some of the emotions and some of the feelings that we are experiencing. And we understand that these are illnesses, right? Very good. Thanks for sharing. So we'll look at what we can say as the health and disease of the soul. Disease or illness is when the soul is uncomfortable, when the soul is experiencing discomfort, lack of ease. So these are some of the feelings or qualities. Even just reading them or saying them, like compassion, generosity, peace, love, happiness, freedom. They bring a sense of lightness and ease to the soul. And what about these in contrast? Selfishness, greed, anger, fear, sorrow, dependency, attachments. They have a negative connotation. So we can say, from the way they make us feel, that this is the state of health and these are the diseases or the illnesses that the soul, at the soul level, at the spiritual level, we face. So what constitutes the innate immunity of the soul? We said for the physical immunity, it's that defense system of the soul, that defense system of the body that protects us from succumbing to outside infections and from becoming ill or sick. With regards to the soul, what constitutes the innate immunity of the soul? These are the qualities that we all want and that we feel that we need them the most. But surprisingly, or more pleasantly, that this is what we all are made up of. These are the same qualities that form the innate immunity of us, each and every one of us. These qualities of peace, love, happiness, power, purity, bliss, and wisdom, these are the ones that are part of our innate immunity. And we can say that when the soul is completely healthy in its natural state of health, that the soul is experiencing constant supersensuous joy. That's the state of bliss. The bliss that is unaffected by anything else outside in the surroundings. That is the state of complete health of the soul. And that is its natural state, filled with all these 7 virtues. So these form the innate immunity of the soul, because these qualities of the soul are the ones that protect the soul from outside influences and outside illnesses. So we said previously that anger, greed, anxiety, sorrow, all these are like diseases of the soul, illnesses of the soul. So these qualities, when they are there in the soul and are protecting the self from the influence of the outside negativity or the illnesses or the viruses and diseases that are affecting the soul. So these form the inner barrier or protection shield for us. So we talked about the physical immunity boosters and we all know about them. But what are the spiritual immunity boosters? We can say that divine love boosts our soul's immunity. That is the love of the soul for the Supreme Soul and the Supreme Soul's, the divine being's love for the soul. When we receive God's love, it acts as a healer for our pain and it prevents us from coming under the stress, and it also removes any sort of conflict that is there in our minds. So, this divine love acts as a booster for our immunity of the soul. And along with this divine love, this spiritual vaccination is the knowledge that we receive from the divine, the supreme being, which is his way of expression of his love to our souls. And experiencing this divine love in meditation is what makes our immunity stronger also. And bringing that into action, bringing that experience of love into action in the form of charitable actions, performing actions in the right awareness of being a soul that is a loving being, a loveful being. When we perform actions with that attitude and with that awareness, then those also increase our spiritual immunity or innate immunity of the soul. So these are different things that boost our spiritual immunity. So we all know that this connection or link that we have with the divine healer, God, is referred to as the healer. In many faiths, we believe that He is the ultimate healer or He is the supreme healer. That incorporeal divine being who is the highest on high is praised and is sung that He's the comforter of hearts because He gives that comfort with His unconditional love to all the souls. And He's also called the purifier because He is cleansing the souls from all the impurity and dirt and any diseases. He is called the eternal surgeon and He is called Vaidyanath. So He's given and sung with all these names, and because He's the one who's removing the sorrow and bestowing the happiness and healing the soul from all its illnesses. So this divine healer is very unique, and by giving us this spiritual vaccination, He heals the souls and He makes the soul proof from all the illnesses. The soul receives this spiritual vaccine, this injection of this spiritual knowledge from the divine, which does wonders. This spiritual vaccine is also unique because in case of physical vaccines that we have that are inventions of science, vaccines' main purpose is prevention. It prevents you from getting sick, from getting illness. But once you are sick, vaccine may not help. Therapeutic vaccines are kind of in the process. They're still at the level of trials, and medical research is going on, but we have not been able to come out with a successful therapeutic vaccine so far. But this spiritual vaccine is unique because it's both preventive and also therapeutic. That is, it prevents the soul from getting sick and coming under the influence of these illnesses, but it also is therapeutic, that it helps the soul to be cured of these illnesses when they are present. So that's the uniqueness and speciality of the spiritual vaccine. And it's very powerful, it's potent, it's precise, to the point, purposeful, that it's dealing with purification. It's changing the perspective of the soul. This divine knowledge that we receive as injection, as a vaccine from the divine, changes the perspective and purifies the vision and attitude of the soul. So it is very purposeful also. And its function, the vaccine works by fighting the viral beliefs and also the diseases, which we call in short as algae. That is the disease of anger, lust, greed, attachment, and ego that are there in the soul, are all cured, and also the soul is prevented from the attack of these. So viral beliefs, we can say, are those limiting beliefs that as souls, as spiritual beings, we confine ourselves to our physical limitations, with understanding that we are physical bodily beings. That is one of the viral belief, and the belief of attaching to ourselves to identity of our roles, belief that we are not good, belief that we are dependent on others for our happiness. All these are limiting viral beliefs, and the other diseases such as anger, lust, greed, attachment, ego, and dependency. All these things are we are prevented from falling under this effect of these viruses and infections, and also the soul is cured when it receives these spiritual vaccines. So if we look at the physical vaccines, how they work is that when a vaccine is given, it stimulates the innate immunity, like the immunity that is inside the body is stimulated, and the vaccine then activates the immune system, the innate immune system, or the immune system of the body, to produce more antibodies, that it's creating more strength to the immune system to fight the infection more effectively. So as a result of that, we stay healthy, we are protected from becoming sick. This is the mechanism of how a regular vaccine works. Similarly, the spiritual vaccine, it, as we said, it works both to prevent the illness and also cure the illness that the soul is facing. So in short, we can say it's the art of healing that's happening. So the spiritual vaccine, as we said, the spiritual vaccination is the knowledge that we are receiving from the divine, from the supreme being, the supreme healer. And he gives us the knowledge of this, the accurate knowledge of our existence, of the soul, and also of our relationship with the supreme being. So with this right knowledge that the soul receives, we have the correct awareness of who we are. And this awareness of everything, like, for each and every point of knowledge that we receive from the divine, acts in creating a new awareness within us. And once we become aware of our new identity, for example, we can take an example of being a peaceful soul. That peace is our nature. So that point, it brings an awareness of peace within us. And that awareness, we turn it into realization when we take it, imbibe it, and take it into our mind and internalize it. And with using methods like contemplation and meditation, we make it a practice, and we make it an experience, and we see that that is our truth. It's no longer a belief, or it's no longer something that we are told to imagine. It's a reality for us. It becomes real, and we experience our own reality of being of peace, of being of love. So this awareness turns into realization, and with realization, then we are able to achieve the transformation. That is, the immune system, the innate virtues or qualities of the soul begin to change, and we bring that transformation within our thoughts, emotions, feelings. And that transformation also is reinforced with this new awareness that we receive from the spiritual knowledge, which becomes a realization for us, and then transformation is seen. So all this process is the mechanism by which the spiritual knowledge or the spiritual vaccine works on the soul. So most of us are able to do this first part. At least some of us do this first part of listening to spiritual knowledge and coming into the awareness of it. But we don't let it materialize or let it sink into us um, by virtue of making it a reality for us. Like, for example, spiritual knowledge, if we take the example of eating food, for that food to give us energy, we need to be able to chew the food, digest it, and um, extract the nutrients from the food, those vitamins and those essential minerals and nutrients that the body needs, that is extracted from the digested food. And those nutrients form part of our blood, or part of our um, innate energy that becomes our immunity also. So the same way, spiritual knowledge also, it's like food that we are receiving for the soul, that doesn't materialize, or that doesn't give us energy until unless that knowledge is assimilated properly, that we come into the experience of being in that awareness of that knowledge by keeping that in our mind, like by churning on it and repeating that knowledge, what we listen and read, it has to become an internal part of us. And that happens like the chewing and digestion of the food. The knowledge that we receive has to be processed by the soul in the mind and the intellect. That internal churning is this process of the art of healing. And until unless these steps happen, we cannot see the result of healing from the illnesses. So if we don't do these steps accurately, then we don't see the results. So it's so important, just as it's important for the food to be digested properly for us to gain that strength from it. The same way, even the spiritual knowledge, just listening or reading doesn't help. It has to be assimilated and processed by the mind and the intellect, and that experienced in meditation and experienced in our thoughts, emotions, and actions. So that brings the transformation or the healing, the internal healing of the soul is seen with these steps happening. So that is why there's also this saying that, that um, the knowledge is like the ointment that is received from the guru. In the Sikh faith, there is a saying that when we receive this ointment of knowledge, then we receive Gnan Anjan Sat Guru Diya. and agyan andher vinas, that when we receive the ointment of knowledge, when we receive the vaccination of this knowledge, that's when the ignorance, the darkness of ignorance is resolved, or it is vanishing. So this process of receiving this spiritual vaccination, and for the soul to process it, to increase the innate immunity of the soul, that gives us and makes us into an authority of experience, because we experience what we are listening and learning as an embodiment of peace, as a powerful being. And as a result of this, the soul becomes healthy, it's free, it's able to remain free from any of these viral beliefs or the vices that we talked about earlier. So we look at some of the spiritual vaccines. So as we said, a vaccine is precise, it's potent, and it's powerful. So this spiritual vaccine, number one, that we are looking at is this simple knowledge, point of knowledge that we are receiving from the divine, that we are who we are. We are a self-sovereign soul, the soul who is the master of the self. So when we receive this vaccine, what does it mean for us? We have to internalize it, that this is what our reality is, that we are masters of the self. So we all can see and ask ourselves whether any of us wants to experience being a slave or a master in life. So it could be a scenario, it could be a situation, it could be a relationship. What do we want to experience? Do we like being a slave, or do we want to be a master? And same way, do we want to be a beggar, or do we want to be a giver? And also, do we want to be a victim, to become a victim to situations or to people, to relationships, or do we want to be victorious? Yes, all of us want to be masters. We want to be givers. We don't want to be slaves. We want to experience power and be victorious. So we want all these things, to be a master, to be a giver, and to be victorious. But how often in our lives are we experiencing these that we want? And why is that happening? Because we are coming into action by forgetting ourselves. So we all have to take this vaccine of being a self-sovereign soul. And by taking this vaccine, we are internalizing this. It's not just a concept, it's not just something that we have listened to or heard about. It becomes a part of us, that we are the master of the self. That is, we realize that at every step, in every situation, we have a choice, either to be a master or a slave. And we want to be masters, we want to be givers. So at every second, every step, we can check for ourselves and be that way, that we want to be the master of the self, free from the influence. The way to be the master of the self is to keep ourselves free from the influence, the external influence. External influence would be for the soul, influence of the body, influence of the role of the body, influence of bodily beings around, influence of the situations and circumstances. All these things, when the soul is in a state of its own mastery, as a self sovereign, free from these external influences, that's when it's called a self sovereign soul or a master of the self. And when we are in this way, then we are free from all the diseases, because any disease or discomfort that the soul goes through comes from the outside. As we said, the natural state of health of the soul is bliss and love. And all these 7 virtues are part of our innate immune system. So when we receive this vaccine of being a master of the self and boost our inner immunity, then we remain safe. So if we look at what is it, why do we not stay in this stage, and why we are coming into the influence of the illnesses, the suffering, sorrow, frustration, all these emotional instabilities that we are coming because we said we are not using the right awareness. And so with this help of this vaccine, we are increasing our immunity, and we begin to take responsibility for our own state of mind. That we understand that any suffering or emotional instability that we are undergoing is our own creation, the creation of our mind, which is under our control of the self-sovereign. So, when we realize this, we know that we need to strengthen this inner immunity to experience liberation and to experience being free from all these illnesses and diseases. So it's easy, and it's we all like to be in this state of being a master of the self all the time, but we have to ask ourselves, why is that not happening? And as we said, we have to be attentive in every situation, whether we are being a master of our mind, or whether we are giving others the mastery over our mind. So how we can take an example, we can make others masters easily when we are not aware of our actions, or when we are not aware of our thoughts that are coming up in our mind. So if we take a simple example, like we all might have created or given mastery to different people around us, to different situations in our life, that we have let them control our mind and let them control our state of being, whether we are sorrowful or happy. We give control to the outside situations. Does it happen? How does it happen? It's so simple. We can take, for example, a simple a scene. If we see, like, we are going to work and we are at work, we see some of our colleagues from before or some other departments, and we greet them, we smile at them, and we wish them having a good day or something. And the other person, the person in front of us, may or might not respond to us. They may respond to us as heartfully as we wish them, or they may not respond to us. So how do we take from that simple situation, we can lose mastery of our own self or mastery of our mind by coming into the influence of thoughts. Like, we create that when we create thoughts like, oh, if that person didn't respond to us, we will be like, oh, why has that person ignored me? What is wrong with him? Or did I do something? Did I hurt that person before? Or we were so good before, what happened now that he's even ignoring me? Or he is like, or he or she is doing this way, is behaving this way. Just that one simple interaction will create, when we are under the influence of that interaction and we lose our own identity, then we create so much of negative thoughts and so much of thoughts back to back, that we lose mastery over our own mind, and we give that person mastery of our mind. So so it's so simple and easy. So we have to pay attention that we wish them with good wishes and we wish them heartfully. How the other person responds is not up to us. This is a simple scenario I wanted to present, but it could be much bigger. Relationships that are close to us and that matter to us, they might not behave with us in the right way. It could be situations which are very critical for us, but we come under the influence of the outside things that are going on, and that coming under that influence is when we are losing the mastery of the self. So, what is that factor? Is that expectation. When we create expectations, and this is our creation, the expectations are coming from our mind, our creation. So, as a self sovereign soul, we create what we want to do, how our thoughts should be, how our action should be, and also how our response should be. It should not come as a reaction or expectation from outside, but it has to be that internal independence should be alive. So it is these expectations that bring sorrow, pain, and suffering. No matter what the degree or the heaviness of the situation may be, it could be a life or death situation. It could be a situation with a very significant relationship in the family or anything. It could be, but it is the expectations that the creation of the self that are bringing us sorrow, pain, and suffering. With this understanding, when we um, come into action with that freedom of that freed state of the self as a master, then we are able to liberate ourselves from this suffering and sorrow. So, because most of the times, that person who didn't greet me, maybe he didn't even notice that I was greeting him, or maybe he was too occupied with some other important task that he had. Maybe he had his own limitations. Maybe he was in physical pain. Maybe there was something else. So, we don't know what the situation of the other person is. But when we lose control and give that control of our mind to them, then we are causing ourselves sorrow and pain. So, this awareness of being a self sovereign soul and practicing that and being in that state frees us from all the suffering. And there was a beautiful webinar a few weeks back about the same thing, the slave mind versus self-sovereign mind. You could refer to that. It was a beautiful talk by one of our sisters, where we clearly can see the drastic difference how a mind that is a slave, that is a beggar, functions, and when we are self-sovereigns, how the mind is free from all these influences. You could refer to that and listen to it. So the next one we will go into is the spiritual vaccine number 2. This vaccine is so important that this simple point of knowledge that we receive from the divine: do not give sorrow, do not take sorrow. So it sounds simple, but it's very important for us to internalize this vaccine and to use it to increase our own immunity, to stay protected from the sorrow and suffering. So the divine being tells us that we are to not take sorrow. We have heard this many times, to not give sorrow, and we understand why we should not give sorrow, because when we are giving sorrow, that is like a negative karma for us. We are accumulating negativity, we are causing trouble to others. So we understand, and we most of the times pay attention to not giving sorrow. But how is do not taking sorrow important? The divine tells us that it is a choice that we have. That is when we have love for the self and when we care for the self, that we have a choice to not take the sorrow. We most of the times think that we don't have this option, that if somebody is behaving a wrong way, in a rude way to us, that it is natural for us to experience sorrow, or when we are in the midst of a critical situation or a harmful situation, it is natural for us to feel sorrow. We don't think that it is a choice for us, that we have this option to not take sorrow. When we are in the state of a master of the self, we can use this option to not take sorrow, to not get that outside negativity influence us. If somebody is saying harsh words to us, then we have an option to not take that into us, to not internalize that harshness into us. They may give it, the others might give it, but we don't have to take it. We don't need to take it. So we understand that to not give sorrow, for us not to give sorrow to others, we need love, mercy, and honesty. We need these qualities within us, because only when we have love, mercy, and honesty, then we don't give sorrow to others. But the same way, even for us not to take sorrow from outside, we need more, a little bit more extra love, mercy, and honesty. This takes more strength. To give sorrow is okay, you need love, mercy, and honesty. But to not take sorrow needs more extra love, mercy, and honesty. And this is very important for all of us. And even for the self, still working on it, to not take sorrow from external situations or people when we are facing harsh circumstances or interactions which are not the nice or pleasant way. To not take sorrow, we need extra love, extra mercy, and honesty. Real strength is needed to protect ourselves. So we take this vaccine of being a master of the self, and for us to not take sorrow from outside protects us from a lot of suffering that we go through. It could be compared to a simple example of, like, for example, if somebody gives us, like, knowingly or unknowingly, they give us like a rotten apple or a rotten fruit. What do we do? Do we take it when we notice that it's not good, it's not it's rotten? Either we tell them politely that it's not good, that we don't want it, we cannot take it, or we take it silently and put it in the trash, right? We don't consume that rotten fruit that is spoiled. The same way, if somebody is speaking harshly to us, if somebody is giving us sorrow, we have an option to put it in the trash. We don't have to keep it inside. We should not consume it into our minds. So it's a constant practice that we need to give ourselves that practice. It's not like, one thing we say and we get it. As we said, with all these vaccines, we have to internalize it. We have to make it a part of us, realize and churn and digest them and make it a part of our practice. That's when we experience that strength and that immunity of our soul going up. And when we stop taking sorrow is when our days of happiness begin. Because no matter how much ever we not give sorrow to others, but as long as we continue to take sorrow from outside, we cannot experience our inner happiness, our bliss uninterruptedly, because we are consuming sorrow and suffering from outside. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible, but it needs constant practice. So we can do a few things and we can train ourselves how we do not take sorrow. Just as that simple example of a rotten fruit, we don't have to consume it, we can put it in the trash. The same way, we can not internalize whatever sorrow is coming to us. We hear it from one ear, let it go out the other. Don't take it into your mind, don't absorb it. Instead, we can focus on giving blessings as a child of the bestower. By stabilizing in our state of self-respect, we can give the other person blessings, and that way protect ourselves from consuming that sorrow from outside. So this is one way to protect from the consuming or taking the sorrow, is to focus on giving happiness. And also the reason for us to take sorrow is when we are not in our state, in our natural state of that self-sovereign state, then we come under the influence of the ego, influence of we come under the influence of the role we are playing now, or the relationship that we are in with other people, or the situation that we are facing. We come under that influence and we create ego, for that is false identities, and that's when we begin to take sorrow. So staying in that self-respect of being a happy being, of being a self-sovereign being, is so important. And we sometimes feel that, so one way we said is to give blessings and take blessings, and give happiness and take happiness. When we focus on these, then we can stop ourselves from consuming that sorrow. And some of the situations we feel that when we take sorrow from others, we are kind of helping others, we are protecting them and sharing them. But in reality, what is happening is when we are consuming sorrow from the situation or from others, is just we are adding to the misery. We're adding to our own misery and also misery of the others and the situation overall. So that's why we could feel that whole, that heaviness that has come upon even this at this times of pandemic, because there was like a collective heaviness in the minds of everyone, with that sorrow, anxiety, because that one sorrow adds to another. So when we think that we are sharing sorrow, what is happening is we're multiplying the misery, we're multiplying the sorrow. So the right way to react in such situations, when we feel like, when we feel empathetic, that we have to give something and take the sorrow away from others, the way we can do that is when we see others also in their state of self-respect. That is, the first step is for us to stabilize in our state of self-respect, of being a peaceful, happy, and powerful being. When we are in that state and look at others, doesn't matter what situation the other person is in, they might be suffering from terminal illness, they might be suffering from severe pain, whatever it is, what they might be having a very bad situation or relationship, anything. If we even are able to see them and give them that good wishes of seeing them in their original state of purity, in their original state of being a happy, peaceful, powerful being, we are giving those vibrations, we are sending those good wishes to them. So they create a layer of protection to that soul also, and they protect them from the sorrow that they're experiencing. Because all this, even when somebody is giving us sorrow, it's because they're not in that state of self-respect. When we look at them in that state, then they get that energy and that power also. So the next vaccine, and the last and the most powerful vaccine that we receive from the divine, is the vaccine of Man Mana Bhava. This is a word derived from Sanskrit, and what it means is to focus our mind on the one, on the divine. And this vaccine, you could call it a panacea. It heals and protects. It's a universal vaccine that protects the soul from all illnesses. It frees the soul of all the diseases and discomforts at all levels. This vaccine of Man Mana Bhava, that is focusing our mind on the one divine being and staying in this constant remembrance of the divine, protects the soul from everything. For this vaccine to work again, that internalization, that process of the awareness, realization, and transformation has to happen. And when we create that accurate and unadulterated link with the divine being, the supreme healer, the soul becomes free of all the illnesses, of all the viral beliefs, all the algae of anger, lust, greed, ego, and attachment. The soul is freed from everything. And for all that disease free state, or that soul to experience that supersensuous state of joy, is we need to rest our mind with the Supreme Being and experience that ultimate security and freedom that we receive from Him. And when we receive that, with that love filled connection of our mind, at all times, whatever we may be doing, whatever we may be in the midst of a situation, a circumstance, relationship, whatever we are dealing with, when we perform all the actions with this connection of the mind, with this link of the mind intact, then everything doesn't matter. We are able to experience that constant state of supersensuous joy. So these are the three examples of spiritual vaccines, we can call them, or the injections of the spiritual knowledge that we receive from the Vaidyanath, the supreme healer, the divine himself. And this connection of the mind with the Supreme Being is what is Raja Yoga meditation. And you can learn that also. We have introduction courses. So before I end today's talk, wanted to just give a small tribute to our loving Dadi Janki Ji, who was the former chief of Brahma Kumaris, and today marks the 1-year anniversary of her ascension. And we can all, those of us who had experience of meeting her or listening to her or watching her elevated versions, we can see that she was an embodiment of these three vaccines that we talked about, that is being a self-sovereign, as a master of the self, even and she was a constant companion of the divine, of the Supreme Being, in constant remembrance of the divine. And her only task was to give and take happiness. That is, every moment she was looking towards taking away the sorrow and giving happiness to others. So on this occasion of the 1-year anniversary of her ascension, we all can pay our tributes to her, and by taking these three vaccinations, and by becoming and being embodiments of these three states ourselves. We can take a few moments to experience and internalize what we have heard so far. Sit comfortably and turn your attention within. Just focusing on the self, letting go of all the external identities. Experience the inner being as that being of light in the center of the forehead, who is operating this body, using it as an instrument. Letting go of this awareness of the body for a few minutes. Just experience the knowledge as nectar dripping down onto the soul from the divine being. injecting the soul with power and energy, giving the realization that we are spiritual beings who are self-sovereigns, masters of ourselves, while being in the midst of everything. We can be free from the influence with this inner link of the mind, using our thoughts and intellect. We connect with that Supreme Being, the Supreme Healer, who gives us strength, experience that link of eternal love, unconditional, pure, enriching love that heals the soul and that prevents any illness by empowering the self. We experience that true freedom and security of belonging to that eternal relationship with the ocean of peace, ocean of love, and ocean of happiness. Ocean of wisdom. We realize we are spiritual beings, elevated divine beings, filled with peace, love, and pure happiness, similar to the eternal healer. This is our natural state. This experience empowers and boosts our inner immunity and keeps us protected at all times. We see ourselves as this pure beings of light, and also when we come into interactions in this physical world, we understand and see and interact with others in their pure state of existence as elevated divine beings beings of peace, love, and happiness. Every interaction of ours becomes a blessing for others. This is the state of complete happiness, peace, love, and bliss. Om Shanti.